mean, I moved to LA when I was pretty young when I moved to LA from Georgia. But it's definitely, it was a shift, you know, it was very different from the small town that my family and we all grew up in. I mean, yeah, my sister, she started before I did, and kind of paved the way in that sense that, you know, little sister wants to do what the big sister does and try it out. But we didn't, I mean, for instance, for the Neon Demon, she didn't read the script. We were very separate with our scripts and things. She saw it for the first time last night, though. She loved it, but yeah, one of the scenes she's like, made her sick.
Oh no.
Yeah, which I was like, good. Yeah. Well, I mean, I see it as, I mean, LA is my home. It's where I go to school there. Well, not anymore. I just graduated 2 days ago. But it's like, yeah.
Yeah, brother.
Not
Top school.
Yeah, so I mean, LA's, to me, there's a seductive side to it, you know. But that's why that's why our movie just had to be placed in that city, because it's a unique place.
Matt Newman, who edits all my films, we've been working together for the last 5 movies, and he has rarely worked with anyone else, so we're very incestuous together. And Matt and Cliff, who became the third part of the team on Drive, we're like the first people that talk about what I would like to do and kind of idea behind it, or whatever kind of pop up in our conversations. If I call up and say, Cliff, hey, I want to do a movie about women, he goes, okay. And you know, it becomes about musical inspirations, and then I'll start writing the script. Because Cliff also knows my wife, so he's worked with her, so there's a very familiar territory between us. And then he reads the script, we talk about the script in terms of the musical point of view. And then I start shooting, because I shot in LA. Cliff lives in LA, it's very easy to constantly communicate. And I had done a track list of music that we would play on set, usually that would inspire the movie. And then I cut the movie at night at my pool house, so Matt would be staying with us, cutting away in the pool house, and then I would come and watch the evenings to stuff. And if Matt ever called during the day and said, I think we need this or need that, I would always listen and say, oh, okay, so we need an extra close-up of something or whatever that, you know. It's about that. If you have those few people around you, the technical side where it's like, you know that we all kind of share the same vision. And editorially, Cliff is the first person to see anything. And I also showed Elle a few scenes. And then Cliff and I start talking about music. And Cliff has 100 questions. He always usually asks, what happened to the script? And I go, oh, it became something else. And then he goes away to the laboratory and comes back with this music that just makes the movies better.
What's your laboratory look like?
My laboratory is pretty much a darkened bedroom. The latest piece of equipment in my studio is the Brookstone Bedwidge, because I've been working on my laptop in bed a lot with earbuds. That's kind of it's a very isolated endeavor. I don't have any great stories about working on the set because I have very limited interaction with other human beings. But the Nicolas and Matt three-headed monster, we would usually in different cities. I came to the pool house a couple of times. And but more often than not, Nicolas involved Matt more than most directors I've worked with. So we're kind of a three-headed monster. And usually Matt was in Munich.
Yeah, Berlin.
Nicolas was in, somewhere over there. Nicolas would call me from Skype in Copenhagen. Matt would get on Skype and we'd have a three-way. And that's
The virtual world.
yeah. So yeah, there was kind of a lot of interaction with the music editor, Matt Newman, more so than most films I work on.
Sorry.
You know.
That never happened. I don't think anyone can relate to
I would
that.
almost turn it around and say it's not just about Los Angeles. I would ask every woman and man in this room if you've ever felt exploited, your image, if you've ever felt undersold by your own beauty or devalued because of your facial structure. You know, I don't think it's just about Los Angeles or the fashion industry or Hollywood. I think this is something that all of society is being affected by, you know.
Oh, believe me. Yeah, sure. I mean, being a father to two daughters is you know, interesting, especially when my eldest turned 13 a few days ago, actually right after camp. And I can see how she, you know, the technology of the future and how she interacts and how she, you know, reacts to it. But the origin of the film was a few years ago when I woke up one morning and I kind of realized in the end, you know, I wasn't born beautiful, but my wife was. And so I thought, I wonder what it would be like having been born beautiful. I mean, there's part of that fantasy that I also think every man has, which is being, you know, desired for one specific reason, which is beauty. And it's of course very superficial, but it's also a very complex theme because beauty says a lot about us as people. That's why beauty is a subject everyone has an opinion about. But I wanted to do it as a horror film because I was thinking this needs to be made for young people, you know, and I didn't want to educate. I didn't want to make a political statement or criticize the future. On the contrary, I think the future is very bright, even though me and Christina had some very good conversations earlier. You know, part of the film was a celebration of narcissism as a quality, you know, the idea of loving oneself. And so it's those kind of different factors that kind of filtered into this idea that I wanted to be a demon, be a movie about being a 16-year-old girl like me.
The funny thing is that I think that my character was probably the most evil of them all. We talked about how she is in a way like Dorothy coming to Oz, but if she was the evil one, because Jessie is kind of like the toxic poison that corrupts everybody else. And I like this film because yes, it's a classic, like A Star Is Born. You know, it comes to a big city, but she has a plan the whole time, and there's this mystery underneath her. You know, and she uses her youth and her innocence as a mask to disguise it. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at it, but for me, that was the most challenging part of it, and also the scariest part of it, of not knowing what's next. And we kind of in the script, she's a little different. We kind of made her a little darker than she even was in the script. So I mean, it was nice to show that side, and definitely, you know, you're driven by fear too, because we filmed in chronological order, and so things were changing all the time. So you're driven by this fear, and you're like, I have to just trust you, you know, and really trusting everyone in the entire cast. We were all in it together, and things, you know, we would come to set and be like, oh well, so what do you want to do? And Nick would ask me that, and so having that, I never felt so free on a set to really just create things. It was a kind of a given power in a way, kind of like Jessie. She finds her power for sure in the movie.
Well, I love silence because silence is the loudest sound in the room. The first time you really pay attention to a sound is when you don't hear anything. then sound becomes much more subjective, and it becomes much more fantasy-oriented, because you begin to make up your own sound. First, it's very uncomfortable, because we're not used to silence. We're used to noise.
Right.
We use the definition of noise. We use the definition of talking. But not talking is actually more scarier than talking. Just like silence is more scary than any sound. And especially nowadays, where entertainment is so much about pulse, you know, feeding things into some kind of constant attention span. But if you actually reverse that and go the opposite direction, it becomes much more interesting.
I also found, I saw the film last night for the first time, and I loved it. And I found that, you know, with the silence, or just with the beautiful image that Nick let us sort of sit in for a little bit, you found yourself having to confront your relationship with what was going on, your relationship with beauty, your relationship with this beautiful girl that, you know, Elle did so beautifully. You know, she's supposed to be this innocent, but then you just see at the end of the scene her get this little smirk of enjoying being adored so much, and this narcissistic, dangerous side of her. And in those quiet moments and moments where it was just music and it wasn't about dialogue, I found myself being like, this is so beautiful, this is so sexual, this is ridiculous, this is goofy, this is, you know, taking fashion to such an extreme that you realize how absurd it really can be. And I liked that I got to sit in those moments and really have to feel it.
Wow.
I feel like helped more and more. Although there's one girl specifically actually who I kind of based Gigi off of, who's that kind of girl who will do anything she can to destabilize you in any situation, professional or otherwise, to try and, I don't know, to increase her own power or make herself feel better. But by and large, like the last film I did was all girls, and I was a bit nervous going into it because I didn't know what to expect, and it was just a really beautiful, sisterhood, and a really supportive kind of vibe, which, you know, is good.
Yeah, I think the stereotype sort of within workplaces of sort of, you know, women battling is a stereotype that I was fed when I was a child, but I've never actually seen it reenacted, except for high school, you know. That's kind of where it lived and died for me. I think that I've seen much more power plays between just men and women. It doesn't really, regardless of gender. I think that women coming together in a group, creating something, I think instantly we feel that it's something special, because it's so rare that you get to kind of be in a coven of women in a way, creating together. And I think just that energy alone is kind of healing. And I find that it's always been, any film I've been on that has had a majority of women on it has been a very special, healing, creative, supportive environment. So I feel like this stereotype of, you know, women working together in a workplace that, like, it's all nails and you know, behind the scenes, it just doesn't exist. It's a stereotype that I think we need to put to bed, because it's like without reinforcement of actual reality, it's just a fantasy, and we should dress it up as a fantasy and let it become that, and take it out of reality, because there's no reason to teach our young girls that these things exist when they don't really, you know. I think it dies out after high school.
To actually answer that, yes. I paid for a teacher.
The second part. It's a multiple choice question.
Are you still going to school?
Oh yeah, no, I went, now I think it's past tense, to a regular school in the Valley that I've gone there since 4th grade, since I was 9. So when I do films, I have a teacher that goes with me, and she works with my school, and they send all the work, so then I can keep up. So then I would. I know all my friends are going to go see it. They're very excited about it. For me, I don't know. It feels like a young film. In Cannes, it was definitely a young film. They really liked it. Yeah. And I mean, for me, two worlds, I don't know. I mean, you have to keep things separate too. If your whole world just became, oh, it's all about movies all the time. I mean, I'm also, graduated, then I had the premiere the next night, and I've just been, but I got to start doing what I want to do for the rest of my life, hopefully. But I just started younger at it. So I think that's kind of, that sounds like the best thing, because then you get to just get better.
But I think that your point is interesting, that beauty is a subject everyone really has an opinion about, Of course, when you're older, you may have a different attitude towards it, but it's equally as important because we're all teenagers. But of course, the creation of the it, or the force of narcissism at a certain age that we all go through, we all remember that time, and we are affected for the rest of our lives in many ways, because beauty is an extremely complicated subject.
Especially now with like social media and stuff, because it's.
But actually, during the movie, we had a great, because when I met Elle, she was 16, and I had written the role for a 16-year-old girl, and she turns 17 while we're shooting, so we're actually having a birthday. And then 4 weeks before Cannes, she turns 18, and on the premiere at Cannes, it's her prom. So it was just like, and with alcohol.
Sorry, we take the one last question.
It'll be interesting. I would just like to say it'll be very interesting, for the peers of these women to watch it and their experience of watching how beautiful these ladies are. And then someone my age, I'm 41, and how I feel about it. And I think it is a young person's movie, but it's definitely something I have to have a different feeling about. If the image of beauty is a 16-year-old girl, how does that make me feel? So I'm just having a different emotion than maybe someone her own age, which might just be jealousy or desire or something, and mine is a different experience.
It's always a worst question.
I loved every scene. I mean, I think when you found something new or you did something you didn't know was going to happen, it's always like, oh wow, you're really pumped.
Yeah.
But I remember when we were doing the runway show, like before she goes on the runway, we were doing all the dressing, where she gets dressed up by Nicola. I had gone to Musso and Frank's the day before, because we were shooting there the following day. And when we arrived in the morning to look at this location, I just dropped my daughter off at school, so I was about 15 minutes late. So when I came into the parking lot, someone had been stabbed, and there was a guy holding the wound and screaming for help. And so I got out of the car, because there was no one else there, because the people before me had gone in prior, so he was all alone. And I, of course, hurried over to this poor man who was lying on the ground, and his blood was just gushing out. And I had my power blanket on, and I took it off because he needed something to hold the wound down. And I gave it to him because he hold the pressure. But unfortunately, the ambulance arrived too late and he died. So then it became a murder scene, and we weren't allowed to leave. And I was basically shooting in the valley. So I was like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? Because the insurance company sure wasn't going to care about if I was stuck in a murder crime scene. So I was waiting around trying to get out of the place, while they were setting up. And everyone didn't really know what we were going to shoot today, because I had told everyone I think I'm going to change something, but I didn't know what to do really. And I was standing around with all the policemen walking around and reporting, and everyone had to answer questions and so forth. I suddenly got a really cool idea. And that idea, changed the film. So even though it was such a horrifying situation, I've never seen anyone die before, he gave me one of the best ideas for the movie.
Wow. All right, thank you guys. movie opens June 24th.
June 24th?